Silence, rightly understood, is not escape nor weakness. It is inner governance. Keeping silent at the right time does not mean renouncing the truth, but choosing the moment, the form, and the just purpose for saying it, or for not saying it yet. The Stoics distinguished the courage of speaking frankly from the recklessness of saying everything at any time. There are hours when silence protects virtue as much as speech. In others, words protect what silence would put at risk. If you have ever felt that a phrase spoken in heat cost you a bond, a project, or your own peace, you already know the price of ignoring that difference. This guide does not propose that you mute your voice, but that you temper it. Wise silence is like the breath of the archer before the shot. It is not inaction, it is aim. We live in a culture that rewards immediate replies, quick wit, and irony that harvests applause. That culture confuses shine with truth and turns dialogue into a coliseum. In such noise, silence looks like losing, but in reality, it is regaining proportion. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that he must look at the nature of each thing before acting. To look at the nature of a conversation sometimes requires not speaking. Silence to listen fully. Silence so that the truth may settle. Silence to avoid turning a conflict into spectacle or a wound into a banner. Words are worth more when they rest upon a clean pause. The pause, when born of reason, returns weight to what you say. Do not confuse this silence with the fear that makes you small. Cowardly silence hides and makes you complicit with what destroys. Wise silence clarifies and brings you back to yourself. One keeps silent to avoid the light, the other keeps silent to see better. One keeps silent out of fear of displeasing, the other out of the will to do well. Epictetus reminded that the first thing is to distinguish what depends on us. Your judgment, your intention, your word, and what does not, others' opinions, or a quick victory in a dispute. The silence we propose here is born of that distinction. You choose silence when your reason indicates that speaking now would harm what you want to protect. There are silences that heal, the one that yields space to listen to someone suffering, the one that extinguishes the spark of a provocation, the one that avoids promising in heat, the one that stops gossip from staining your character, the one that protects a negotiation, the one that guards your purpose from the vanity of showing off, the one that separates you from sterile disputes, the one that delays a truth until it can be spoken without injustice. There are also silences that wound, the one that covers abuse, the one that indefinitely postpones necessary repair, the one that fakes peace in exchange for resentment. Wisdom is knowing which is which. Seneca advised that anger must not seize our tongue. A word hurled without temperance is like an arrow shot in darkness. It may strike something you did not mean to touch. Temperance is not coldness. It is warmth inhabited with measure. When it governs you, your silence is not ice. It is containment. And when at last you speak, you do so with a sobriety that needs no raised tone to be firm. He who shouts is usually fighting himself. He who has waited for the moment needs no theatre. This episode is a map of 10 concrete moments when silence is fitting. They are not prohibitions, but exercises of care. Caring for your judgment against the storm of emotions. Caring for your bonds against the poison of rumor. Caring for your work against the clumsiness of speaking too much, caring for your dignity against the temptation to show off, caring for your reputation against the haste of promising, caring for your attention against the swamp of empty arguments, caring for your justice when a truth spoken now would wound without need. Each moment trains a different muscle, and in the end, all point to the same place, a life where your words and your silences serve the good. Imagine your tongue as a precision instrument, and your silence as the sheath that preserves it. You do not play at any time or in any hall, but when the music can serve its task. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we must prefer what endures to what merely shines. In conversation, what endures is the truth spoken with charity and in due time. What shines is the clever comeback that burns for a minute and leaves ashes for months. Your task is to choose the first, even if you lose applause. I propose also a practical criterion. If emotion drags you, if you lack facts, if your interlocutor wants spectacle, if the other is wounded, if the context is unsafe, if you are selling yourself for praise, if you speak to promise what you cannot yet sustain, if the topic is a trench without end, or if the truth now would crush unjustly, choose silence. Not forever, but until reason recovers the helm and can steer your words with justice. To keep silent in this way is not to hide, it is to prepare. There is a sober joy in governing the tongue. At day's end, when you review your scenes, you will find fewer phrases you wish to erase and more gestures of presence that honor you. What troubles men is not things, but their opinions about things, said Epictetus. Reasonable silence allows you to examine your own opinions before hurling them upon others. And the best revenge is not to resemble the one who harmed you, wrote Marcus Aurelius. We might add, the best conversation is not born of the wound, but of reason tempered by benevolence. Let us advance then through these 10 moments, not to become mute, but to become exact. Silence at the right time will make your words, when they come, have root. Speech will no longer be a discharge, but an act, and that act, sustained by virtue, will be capable of building where before there was only noise. That is the path, to pass from impulse to governance, from noise to music, from reaction to choice. Calmly. Before we begin, I want you to declare your commitment by leaving in the comments. From today, I will keep silent where my peace is worth more than my impulse. That phrase will be your reminder that silence is not cowardice, but self-governance. That you are here not to keep reacting to noise, but to train the temperance and clarity that return you to freedom. This is the moment to prove to yourself that your voice is not wasted on the trivial, that your silence has weight, and that your dignity deserves protection. Without further preamble, let us begin. First Stoic lesson: when emotion governs you, when emotion rules, the tongue serves the fire. Anger wants to release the arrow, anxiety wants to fill the void with words, pride wants to prove it will not yield. In that moment, speaking is almost always losing the helm. Seneca called anger a brief madness, precise in diagnosis, blind in execution. If you recognize yourself with a racing pulse, a clenched jaw, a head fabricating arguments as if they were weapons, be silent. Be silent not as one who surrenders, but as one who takes his hands off the wheel when he sees them skid on ice. First regain traction, then decide the route. That silence, small as it may seem, can spare you weeks of repair. Keeping silent when emotion governs begins in the body. Breathe through the nose, draw the air down to the abdomen, lengthen the exhalation. The nervous system reads this gesture as a signal of safety and lowers the alarms. With 2 or 3 slow breaths, you are no longer hostage to your tide. Epictetus would phrase it differently: suspend assent to the first impression. Do not believe at once what emotion dictates about the other and about yourself. Between the fact and your judgment, there is a space. Silence sets a chair in that space so you may sit and look. Perhaps emotion demands justice. That is legitimate. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that no one can force you to act without your reason's consent. The problem is not wanting justice, but demanding it with a trembling hand. A truth released, steeped in anger, rarely reaches a good port. Even if you are right, the form deforms it. If you wait, if you let the tide settle, you can say the same with a sober firmness that invites repair instead of defense. Silence, then, does not postpone justice, it prepares it. There are inner signals that warn you it is not yet the moment. When you repeat the same phrase in your mind as if it were a hammer, when you invent imaginary witnesses to reaffirm yourself, when your body seeks a posture of attack, when you struggle to hear even a single full sentence from the other, this is not the moment to speak. If you speak, it is your wound that will speak, and when the wound speaks, it almost always wounds. Let your silence be a bandage, not a censorship. Bandage yourself first, breathe, wait until your pulse regains its rhythm, and then express what is necessary in words that can be heard. You can help yourself with a simple outward gesture. Press your feet to the ground and notice their weight. Loosen your tongue inside your mouth. Drop your shoulders a centimeter. These small adjustments send your mind a message of presence. From there, tell yourself a short phrase. Now I do not speak. Now I observe. Repeat it 2 or 3 times. It is not a spell. It is an instruction to your attention. Soon, you will notice that what seemed indispensable to say in that second loses urgency and gains outline. When the outline appears, truth gains allies. If the scene allows, step away for a moment. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself as medicine, put time in between, and you will see things smaller and calmer. Walk for a few minutes, drink water, write a paragraph to drain the first surge, bring the body back to its seat. Silence is not cutting the bond, it is cutting energy to the storm. You will return different, and the other will also have lowered his temperature a notch. Then the conversation will hold 2 people, not 2 tides. Sometimes emotion is pain. When it hurts, we are more fragile, prone to interpret a neutral gesture as an attack. Silence here gives you time to separate old pain from the present scene. Is it your history speaking or this fact? If it is your history, put a hand on its shoulder and tell it will not decide for you. To speak from the wound may be cathartic, but it is rarely just. If you honor your pain in silence first, when you speak, you will do so with truth, not with vengeance. A useful rule: say nothing that will force you to apologize for the manner, even if the content was true. If your words are poisoned arrows, even hitting the mark, they leave venom. Train yourself to speak truth without venom, and for that the first step is to remain silent until you are calm. Do not seek the witty phrase that wins, seek the just phrase that serves the good. Seneca insisted that brief, sober speech is more effective than a long tirade. Sobriety clears, tirade inflames. If you struggle to stop in time, agree with yourself on exit signals, a word that reminds you to withdraw, a mental image, a rock breaking waves, an archer waiting. The commitment not to answer within the first 5 minutes to messages that trigger your impulse. These small fences sustain your freedom while the habit strengthens. At first, it may feel artificial. Later, it becomes style, and your environment, little by little, will learn that your silence is not contempt, but responsibility. Some confuse this silence with manipulation. It is not. You do not use silence to punish. You use it not to harm. If you need to withdraw, say so. I prefer to talk when I am calmer. That phrase is not an excuse. It is care. Expressed this way, your silence ceases to be a wall and becomes a bridge to a better conversation. Finally, ask yourself what you want to build with your words. If you want to build respect, do not raise it with shouts. If you want to build agreement, do not achieve it by humiliating. If you want to build truth, do not announce it to the rhythm of fury. Be silent, wait, and then speak as one who first built within himself what he now wishes to share. The time of that silence may be short, but its fruit lasts long. And when you close the day, you will see that you decided from yourself, not from your tide. This moment of silence is not an invitation to passivity. On the contrary, it is active training that requires courage. The courage not to obey the first impulse. The courage to protect the other from your storm and to protect yourself from your own recklessness. The courage to prefer justice over quick victory. When emotion rules, let it be your decision to rule it. Be silent to listen, to temper yourself, to speak better. Then your word will not be reaction, but an act with roots. Second Stoic lesson: when you don't have enough data. When data is missing, the imagination manufactures it, and does so in the colors of fear, desire, or prejudice. That is why speaking without sufficient information usually sows confusion. The Stoic remedy is sober. Suspend judgment, not forever, but until you see. Epictetus taught us to distinguish between what is presented to the mind and what the mind adds. What is presented is the fact. What you add is conjecture. Be silent while you separate one from the other. Then ask, verify, and only then form a sober opinion. Suspending judgment is an act of intellectual humility. You do not know yet, and saying I don't know is more dignified than pretending. Marcus Aurelius preferred naked truth to virtuous appearance. Do not feign knowledge. Declared ignorance opens a door to learning. False certainty closes it. If you feel pressured to give an opinion, remember that another's haste is not your duty. Your duty is to safeguard the quality of your word. Silence here protects that quality. Before speaking, ask clear questions. What exactly happened? Who was present? When? Where? Which independent sources agree? If you cannot answer, you still have no ground. Speaking without ground will make you stumble in public, and worse, it will accustom you to living on rumors. Seneca warned that the crowd presumes lightly. Avoid that contagion. Prefer precision over haste. Precision requires time and listening. Silence grants both. There are also subtle self-deceptions. You think you sense the truth because the story fits your expectations, but fitting does not make it real. Confirmation bias is not philosophy, it is mental comfort. Epictetus would invite you to test your impressions. What contrary evidence would you consider sufficient to change your mind? If the answer is none, you are not investigating truth, you are defending identity. Stay silent until you can respond with openness. Verification is not always easy. Sometimes you have no access to sources. Sometimes the facts are hidden behind legitimate confidentiality. Sometimes time itself will reveal what cannot yet be seen. In those cases, silence protects your reputation and that of others. You can express prudence without affirming what you do not know. I don't have enough elements. I'd rather wait until there's clarity. When the data arrives, we'll talk. These phrases are not cowardice, they are responsibility. In private conversations, the noise of suspicion also calls for silence. If someone tells you a half version, do not fill in the rest with your imagination. Ask calmly. Seek facts, not rumors. Marcus Aurelius advised breaking things into their parts to see them as they are. Do the same with stories. Distinguish what was seen from what was heard, what was inferred from what was proven. If even then you cannot know, withhold judgment until further notice. Your mind will rest, and your relationship will not pay for phantom accusations. Remaining silent when data is missing also protects you from promising what you cannot deliver. In work, committing without information is planting a time bomb. Stop, ask about scope, resources, deadlines, success criteria. If there are no answers, there is no agreement. Seneca insisted that things well thought out endure, rushed ones collapse. He who speaks too much without foundation gives away his credibility. Do not waste it. A useful exercise. Turn your desire into a hypothesis and your hypothesis into an experiment. Instead of asserting, explore. Instead of announcing, test. The language of exploration is humble and clear. It seems, it points to, we don't yet know. The language of false security is loud, always, never, everyone. The first invites collaboration, the second builds trenches. Silence before choosing a language reminds you which serves truth. On social media and in public debates, lack of data is covered with volume. Do not fall into that trap. Your serenity is worth more than a rhetorical point. If the subject deserves it, investigate. If not, save your attention for what you can know honestly. Life is short, Seneca reminded us. Wasting it on low-quality conjecture is to lose it twice. When at last you have data, speak without humiliating. Present the information soberly, admit what you still do not know, show why your conclusion is reasonable, and remain open to revision. That way the conversation becomes a shared search. Epictetus would say you love truth more than your opinion. That love makes you reliable, and reliability over time outweighs any momentary cleverness. If the data never comes, accept that not giving an opinion is itself a form of judgment. Abstaining also says something. It says you respect limits, you protect causes and names, you will not play guessing games with other people's lives. Marcus Aurelius preferred losing the chance to speak to losing integrity. Make that preference yours. Be silent when you must, so that the day you speak, your voice will carry the weight of one who does not speak out of habit, but out of duty. To help yourself, create a simple verification protocol: 2 independent sources, a date, a context, a probable motive. If you cannot cross that threshold, do not affirm. And if you were wrong, correct quickly and with gratitude toward the one who showed you the mistake. Your prestige does not fall by admitting a correction. It falls by clinging to an error once you already have enough light, with serene judgment. Also remember that some subjects require experts. Do not demand of yourself what does not belong to you. The wise recognize their limit and honor it. Epictetus advised practicing modesty in matters where you lack skill, learn or listen. Modesty spares you empty speeches and gifts you learning. You will also avoid needless conflict if you translate your silence. You may say, "I'd rather not comment without context. I need to review before answering. I don't have enough information for a conclusion." Translating silence prevents others from mistaking it for indifference or contempt. Expressed with respect, your silence becomes an invitation to improve the conversation. Lastly, do not forget that you too deserve evidence when you judge yourself. If you call yourself clumsy, lazy, or incapable, on what facts do you base it? What contrary evidence are you ignoring? Marcus Aurelius worked carefully on his inner dialogue not to injure himself. Imitate him. Apply to your self-criticism the same standard you demand of others: data, context, trend. You may discover you condemned yourself without trial. Remaining silent when data is lacking is not an empty pause. It is an active gesture of respect for reality. It is the door through which enters the light of what is, not what you wish it to be. When truth appears, you will welcome it without adornment. And if it never appears, you will have protected your peace and that of those around you, because you did not drag them into the theater of conjecture. Thus, slowly your word gains density and your silence gains prestige. And where noise abounded, a conversation begins to be heard that is, at last, worth having. Third Stoic moment, in the face of direct provocation. Provocation seeks your reaction, not your reason. It is a hook cast into the waters of your attention to pull you out of your course and into someone else's theatre. Responding in the heat of the moment confirms to the provocateur that they have found your button. Choose another move. Remain silent. Silence cuts off the incentive, deactivates the show, and preserves your energy for what truly serves your telos. Marcus Aurelius prepared himself each morning for the people he would inevitably encounter: the imprudent, the ungrateful, the arrogant, the envious, and he added that no one can harm you unless you hand over your judgment. In the face of provocation, that teaching becomes practical. Do not hand over your judgment to someone who only wants to see you lose it. First, distinguish what kind of provocation it is. There are clumsy provocations born of the other person's pain, and there are cynical provocations that seek only spectacle. Both demand sobriety, but not the same response. If the other is wounded and lashes out poorly, your silence may be a listening that does not add fuel. If the other is playing, your silence is a wall against which their game rebounds. In both cases, speaking little and late protects you. Speaking much and soon delivers you up. Seneca distrusted both another's anger and his own. He advised not to imitate the vice you criticize. If provocation comes with sarcasm, do not answer with more. If it comes with volume, do not raise yours. If it comes with traps, do not enter the maze. Your silence is the refusal to participate in the aggressor's logic. That refusal is not weakness, it is independence. When there is no audience, the theater goes dark. Practically, direct provocation usually appears in 3 places: the face-to-face discussion, the written message, and the public stage. In person, choose slow breathing, a calm gaze, and the minimal phrase. Say what is necessary and nothing more. If the tone keeps rising, withdraw with dignity. In writing, do not reply immediately. Text freezes misunderstandings and multiplies them. Wait, reread, ask for a call or a meeting if the bond is worth it. In public, remember you do not owe a reply to every invitation to the ring. Your silence is a boundary announcing you do not play that game. The provocateur feeds on your justifications. The more you explain, the more material you provide for new rounds. Train the clear, short phrase, "I will not enter that dynamic." Do not repeat it 10 times. Twice is enough. If they persist, your silence will do the rest. Epictetus would put it this way: protect your faculty of choice from those who wish to govern it. That protection begins with not letting them set your tone or your topic. Remember that there are provocations that do demand a firm response, especially when a boundary of respect or justice is crossed. Silence is not always the end. Sometimes it is the first step that allows you to choose an effective action. You may document, call witnesses, appeal to the proper channels, or file a formal complaint. But avoid the verbal outburst that lowers you to the aggressor's level and robs you of authority. Firmness does not shout, it acts. A preventive exercise. Identify your triggers. There are words, gestures, or tones that set you off. Name them to yourself and create a protocol. Whenever they appear, you will pause, ask for clarification, or step away. Marcus Aurelius used the image of the rock. Be rock. The waves crash, the rock remains. Not because it does not feel the force, but because its form does not depend on that blow. Your form does not depend on today's mockery. It depends on your renewed choice to act according to virtue. On social media, provocation is an industry. The algorithm rewards outrage because it keeps people glued to the screen. Your attention is someone else's business. Your dignity is your business. Every reply you give feeds the wheel. If something truly matters, find a more human channel. If not, keep silent and direct your attention to what builds. Seneca would say you cannot sail to every cry of the wind. Set your course. When provocation comes from someone dear, it hurts more. There, silence should not cover up the truth that deserves to be spoken. Choose a calm moment and name the pattern without humiliating. When you use mockery as a response, it makes conversation difficult. I'd rather we talk without irony. That approach does not play, it corrects. If the pattern persists, adjust the distance. Love does not require enduring scenes that break respect. Silence in time spares you the scene. Speaking later, calmly, repairs the channel. There are provocations that tempt you to show off. They lure you to prove you know more, see more, can do more. That is a special hook, vanity. If you bite, you lose focus and give away your peace. Epictetus warned not to flaunt in the marketplace what is trained in the soul. Better to remain silent and let your works, over time, speak where boasting only makes noise. To sustain silence, care for the body. Shoulders soft, jaw loose, gaze kind without submission. A serene body communicates more than 1,000 defensive phrases. Your tone is also a boundary. If your tone is clear and measured, sometimes a single sentence suffices to close an entire scene. If your tone trembles, even the best idea falls flat. Practice in front of a mirror a phrase that restores your axis. I will not argue on these terms. Brief, whole. Do not forget that provocation has seductive side effects. Even when you win, you lose something. You lose elegance, time, focus, the subtle respect of those watching. A victory that leaves a bitter taste was no victory, but a discharge that builds you afterward. Marcus Aurelius wrote that nothing is as fitting as acting according to rational nature. Responding to provocation with theatre is not natural to reason. It is natural to vanity. Leave it unfed. If you lead a team, teach by example. When someone provokes you in public, do not turn the shared space into a ring. Be silent, give order, postpone if necessary, and handle the matter in the proper setting. That way you educate without humiliating. And when you do need to respond, do so with actions, change a process, apply a rule, set a clear standard. Facts disarm what words cannot. Finally, remember that remaining silent in the face of provocation is not eternal withdrawal. It is a tactical decision not to give away your energy and to safeguard the greater good. Once you have regained your axis, you can speak or act with precision. If the provocateur sought spectacle, they will lose it. If they sought to wound you, they will find someone who does not give away their center. And if they sought help, your serenity will show them a mirror more dignified than their own provocation. One last practice: name to yourself the purpose of the conversation before entering. If your purpose is understanding, every hook loses its force. Write one line in your notebook or in your mind. Today, I choose to understand and protect the bond. It will remind you that silence is a form of active care, not a void. From there, when you do decide to speak, you will do so without debt to pride, and your word will fall where it should, in the place where it builds. Fourth Stoic moment: when the other person is suffering. When someone is suffering, speaking hastily is often a way of fleeing from the trembling stirred in us by another's pain, fleeing from the helplessness of not being able to fix everything, making noise to fill a room where the most human act would be simply to remain present. To be silent in this moment is an act of mature love. It is not distance or coldness, it is a form of presence that does not invade. Presence before advice is the rule that orders tongue and hands. The ancients understood this well. There are words that heal, and words that, however well-intentioned, are an added weight upon a chest already heavy. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to look at the nature of each thing. When the nature of what happens is suffering, the first just response is to make space, not to occupy it. A tempered silence returns air to one who can barely breathe. The first care is with your own reflex to solve. The rush to give solutions often comes from the inability to bear tears or confusion. You think helping means giving instructions or phrases from a manual, but here helping means supporting without colonizing. Bringing a glass of water, adjusting a blanket, softly asking if it would help to open the window. These are small, precise gestures that say, "I am with you," without demanding that the other educate you in their pain. Seneca, in his consolatory letters, warned against the shine of commonplaces. Everything passes, life goes on, be strong. They may be true, but in hours of wound, they are polished stones dropped on glass. The silence that listens avoids that stoning. Listening is not waiting for your turn to speak. It is allowing the other to name what they feel at their own pace, even if that pace unsettles you. Epictetus taught us to distinguish what depends on us from what does not. In another's pain, little depends on you except your attitude. It depends on you not to judge, not to compare biographies, not to minimize or dramatize, not to steal the center from one who needs it. It depends on you, if words are needed, to ask modestly what is useful now. Do you want me just to listen? Would you rather we think of something practical? Do you need silence? Such questions assume nothing. They open a door. The silence that precedes them cleanses your voice so it does not come out tinted with your own anxiety. There are pains that call for action, and remaining silent too long would be abandonment. That is why silence here is not absolute but prelude. You remain silent so that the words that follow are not born of your desire to feel necessary, but of real need. If a doctor must be called, you call. If food must be prepared, you prepare it. If the children must be watched so someone can sleep, you offer. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that man's work is to help man. Helping is not about being the protagonist. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is disappear when the one who ought to be there arrives, or step back so the sufferer can rest without feeling like a host of their own pain. Another's suffering summons your own ghosts. It brings back old images, your losses, your unexamined guilt. If you confuse them with what is happening, you lose your grounding. Stop for a moment and look within. Is what burns from today or from before? If from before, ask for relief, write 2 lines on paper, breathe slowly, and return with more ground under your feet. Epictetus would invite you to recognize your own limit. No one can support another if they cannot hold themselves at least a little. Taking care of yourself is part of caring. You are not less compassionate for stepping aside to drink water or cry 5 minutes alone. You are more useful because you return cleaner of yourself. There is also the silence that guards confidentiality. What is entrusted to you in pain is not material for social chatter, nor a trophy for the ego that wants to appear wise. It is a sacred deposit. If, after accompanying someone, you find yourself recounting details that are not yours, you have betrayed the care. To remain silent here honors the trust and protects the dignity of the one who gave it. Marcus Aurelius despised theatre, renounced turning yourself into a narrator of others' tragedies. The world needs fewer indiscreet chronicles and more safe rooms where one can be broken without becoming content. There is another temptation, to point to culprits immediately to feel order. Blaming fate, the system, or a person gives you the illusion of control, but can poison relationships and distort urgent decisions. Silence suspends judgment until the tide passes. Then, if appropriate, there will be firm and just words. Seneca valued the prudence that delays a verdict when the mind is agitated. A serene mind sees better. This is not about relativizing, but about not issuing sentence amid smoke. Mature compassion asks concrete questions that require no speeches. Is it cold? Are they thirsty? Should the phone be turned off? Should something be cancelled today? Who can accompany tomorrow? These are tactile questions that silence makes visible. A timely hot soup is philosophy applied. An ice pack in a trembling hand teaches more than 18 maxims. Silence opens the eyes to see those micro-urgencies. When you talk too much, you miss them because you are listening to yourself. Do not forget the afterward. Often the real work begins when the others have already left. A short message the next day, a brief visit without demanding conversation, bringing food, helping with paperwork, offering a ride to the doctor. Constancy without spectacle. Epictetus would praise that humble perseverance that does not need applause. It does not seek the perfect phrase or the photo. It shows up and does what must be done. That way says, I did not come to be a spectator. I came to be present. And remember once again to care for yourself. One who accompanies without measure burns out, and burned out ceases to serve. Reserve hours of rest. Speak with someone you trust without betraying secrets. Write, pray, or walk according to your path. Marcus Aurelius, burdened with enormous tasks, wrote to himself to return to center. You can jot down 1 line to remind yourself of your task, not to save the world, but to love well those life has entrusted to you today. Temperance protects benevolence. If you organize yourself, you will be able to sustain a kind presence longer without resentment. To remain silent when another suffers is not to withdraw from the world. It is to withdraw from the center so that the center is care. It is renouncing the temptation to shine as a counselor and accepting the most humble and highest vocation to accompany. If you manage to remain in the background and another's breathing grew deeper for a few minutes, you have done much. Later words will come, and, if needed, decisions. For now, let your silence be a lit house where someone weary can enter and sit without becoming a pupil of your theories. That refuge is worth more than any speech. Time also educates the tongue. In the first hours the storm rules. On the 3rd day comes the possibility of better understanding. Later perhaps the chance to learn something. Do not rush any of those stages with speeches. Accompany the rhythm with simple signs of availability and respect. If you decide to speak, choose quiet verbs and short sentences. Name what you see without diagnosing souls. Offer your hand without demanding that it be taken. Thus, your presence does not compete with pain. It supports it until it can walk on its own. Fifth, Stoic moment. In the face of gossip or slander. Gossip is the exercise of a tongue without purpose. It seems light, entertaining, harmless. It ends up costing dearly. Slander is its older brother, no longer only entertaining, but wounding. In the face of both, silence is discipline and shield. It is not about becoming severe or pretending indifference, but about protecting your character and the health of your bonds. A life that feeds on speaking of absentees loses depth. A friendship that rests on others' confidences loses height. Marcus Aurelius preferred what endures to what shines. Gossip shines for a minute and leaves ashes for months. If you are invited to that bonfire, deny the wood. Your silence extinguishes it before the smoke enters the house. Why is gossip so attractive? Because it soothes the anxiety of not knowing, because it offers belonging at low cost, because it allows us to feel better than for a while. Epictetus warned against the urge to comment on what does not concern us, against that passion for what lies outside our sphere. Talking about the lives of others distracts us from our own work and excuses us for a moment from looking at ourselves. But that relief charges interest. Trust is disordered. The gaze is clouded. Disloyalty is normalized. A community that tolerates gossip grows accustomed to side glances. A team that cultivates it lives on guard. To be silent here is a form of hygiene. There are degrees, a curious remark, a veiled criticism, a malicious insinuation, a moral judgment disguised as concern, an accusation without proof. All share one thing: the absentee is not present to defend themselves. Seneca called upon the tongue to serve honesty. If what you are about to say could not be said in front of the person in the same tone, it likely should not be said at all. That simple and demanding criterion works as a beacon. If you change tone depending on who listens, you are not seeking truth, you are seeking an audience. Silence keeps you from becoming a performer in those clumsy concerts where each one plays only for themselves. There is gossip disguised as concern. I worry about so-and-so, not to criticize, but that detour does not purify the intent. If you are truly worried, go to the person with respect and ask how to help. If you are unwilling to look them in the eye, then perhaps it is not worry, but curiosity. Marcus Aurelius detested theatre. You can honor that aversion by refusing to play the role of hypocritical prudence. True prudence chooses the right channel and the right moment, not the table where wine flows and tongues loosen. To remain silent does not mean to tolerate injustice. If someone slanders, your initial silence is a resource to avoid feeding the fire and to gain clarity. Then, if real harm is being done, action is needed. Ask for proof, halt the chain, invite the matter into the proper forum. Epictetus would teach you to ask about the facts, what happened, who saw it, where, when. If there are no answers, there is no case. A calm, "I will not take part in this," cuts off many conversations. It does not shout, it does not preach, it simply states a standard. Over time, people learn not to bring to your table what will not serve real food. Gossip also tries to buy your belonging. It offers you a seat in the inner circle in exchange for your ear. The price is loyalty. If you accept, you have signed a contract. No one spoke. Tomorrow they will speak of you with the same abandon. Seneca warned that nothing degrades character as much as cruel entertainment. When the joke includes the honor of someone absent, it is no longer humor. It is soft violence. Your silence, accompanied by a change of subject or an elegant exit, defends the boundary without creating a scene. You do not need to become a censor. It is enough not to laugh, not to ask, not to add. The wheel stops by inertia. There are, however, moments when silence perpetuates harm, especially if slander is used to destroy reputations. Justice demands another response, to intervene with facts, to document, to request correction, to accompany the affected so they may have a voice. The Stoic is not naive. He knows there is malice in the world and that the common good sometimes demands raising one's voice. The difference lies in motive and method. One speaks to repair, not to shine. One speaks with evidence, not with insinuations. Marcus Aurelius repeated that we must act according to rational nature. Reason demands precision, not rumor. A useful training is to practice short phrases that break the flow. I prefer not to talk about those who are not here. If it's important, better discuss it with them. I don't have the facts. It hasn't been confirmed. These are short keys. They are not arrogant, they are sober. At first you may be met with annoyance. By the third time you will be respected. Clarity without scandal educates. Epictetus would say that the wise man is not the one who wins the argument, but the one who preserves the ability to choose the good. Your choice to stay out of that stream is a silent act that, without moralizing, changes the atmosphere. Mind the format too. Forwarded messages, endless audios with versions from a good source, screenshots out of context are the ideal ecosystem for gossip. Avoid them. Do not forward. Do not share material you would not verify face-to-face with the one involved. If you make a mistake, repair it, apologize, and stop the chain. Seneca stressed the promptness in correcting error so that it does not take root. The speed with which one who loves truth repairs is more eloquent than 1,000 justifications. In work teams, explicitly declaring that absent people are not to be discussed is powerful prophylaxis. Setting up formal feedback channels, enabling face-to-face meetings, reserving spaces for frank disagreement reduces the need for hallway conspiracies. Silencing gossip and opening legitimate conversation are not the same. Marcus Aurelius would turn that distinction into rule. Whatever serves the common task, proceed. Whatever sows suspicion, discard. When the organization adopts that standard, energy ceases to be spent on phantoms and is invested in the task. There is also spiritual gossip, using someone's intimacy as an edifying example without permission, turning their process into an anecdote for our moral display. It is a refined form of vanity. Epictetus would urge us to examine intention before speaking. Do I want to help, or do I want to appear wise? If the second weighs more, stay silent. Truth without charity wounds. Charity without truth confuses. Gossip disguised as charity does both. When slander has you as its target, silence can seem unbearable because injustice hurts. Here it is wise to combine silence with action. Do not enter every ring. Document, seek support, speak in the proper forum, and meanwhile keep your tongue at rest in the corridors. Marcus Aurelius suggested that the best way to defend oneself is to live so that rumor sounds implausible. It is not magic comfort, but strategy. Cultivating a coherent life is the best insurance against slander, and if it still hurts, remember that you do not control others' opinions. You control your response. That freedom is yours. Gossip finally impoverishes the imagination. Where there could have been authentic questions, it installs suspicion. Where there could have been learning, it places cynicism. Where there could have been closeness, it raises walls. Your silence, repeated with serenity, opens space for something else, real interest. Approaching someone who intrigues you and asking with respect, admitting when you were wrong, asking permission to share something that is not yours. Small acts that restore dignity to conversation. Seneca would invite us to prefer demanding friendship over light complicity. If today you decide to stop talking about absentees, you will not become mute. You will become trustworthy. And trust is a good that takes time to gain and is lost in seconds. To be silent in time, to be silent when the tongue wants to show off with the lives of others, to be silent where your voice would be gasoline, is a form of temperance that sustains justice. When the time comes to speak, face to face, with respect, with evidence, your word will carry weight. Until then, your silence will have done the quiet work of preserving what matters. When you speak in excess, it is not always you who speaks. It is your anger, your fear, your need for approval. It is that impulse that makes you promise more than you can, enter battles not worth fighting, or wound with truths told at the wrong time. And if you do nothing, that habit becomes your whole life, a life governed by noise and not by reason. That is why subscribing is not a minor gesture. It is choosing to train in the art of timely silence, the discipline that protects your peace and restores strength to your voice. Here, you will not find empty phrases, but stoic reminders and practices to transform your silence into freedom and your word into justice. Not subscribing means remaining trapped in useless arguments, draining yourself on social networks, promising in heat, and carrying burdens you could have avoided. Subscribing means having, every week, a refuge and a guide to train temperance, to learn to be silent when your peace is worth more than your impulse, and to speak only when your words can build. If you recognize these signs in yourself, do not ignore them. For the truth is harsh. The disorder of the tongue is not broken with excuses or wishes, it is broken with decisions. And this is one of them. Do it now. Subscribe. Because each episode can be that pause that saves you from a senseless argument, that strategy that frees you from an irreversible mistake, that teaching that turns your silence into power. Your life was not made to dissolve into noise. It was made to shine with clarity, sobriety, and virtue. Sixth Stoic moment, in a negotiation without a clear advantage. Negotiation is, in large part, the management of silences. He who speaks too much gives away information, reveals weaknesses, anchors against himself, promises what he has not measured. In a negotiation without a clear advantage, silence is a strategic and ethical ally. It allows you to think, to observe, to ask, and to decide from reason, not from pressure. Epictetus would recommend halting assent at the first impulse. Here it means not committing before understanding. Marcus Aurelius would remind you to look at the nature of the thing. What is truly on the table? What do you need? What can be conceded without betraying your form? What cannot be touched? Without that examination, the tongue negotiates for you and often sells cheaply. Silence returns the radar to you. While the other lays out their case, your task is to read rhythms, map interests, note contradictions, identify what is said and what is avoided. Short questions, long silence. What problem would this solve for you? What timelines do you really work with? What metrics define success? And then silence. The uncomfortable silence often brings information that a hurried conversation would never reveal. It is not manipulation. It is allowing reality to present itself without pushing it with your words. Seneca defended the deliberate slowness of one who does not want to mistake the good. The good of negotiation is a fair and sustainable agreement, not a noisy, fragile victory. In scenarios without a clear advantage, speaking to fill gaps weakens you. The need to please seeks a quick close. That haste is costly. Unnecessary discounts, onerous conditions, vague clauses. Temperance assists you. Pause. Ask for time to review. Request that agreements be put in writing. Return with questions. If the other side presses, remember that their urgency is not your duty. Do not be dragged along by what does not belong to you. Marcus Aurelius would write, do not be dragged either by the rhythm of one who needs you to say yes by yesterday. Silence cuts that pull and guards your judgment. There is a kind of silence worth gold, the one that follows your offer. You state a number, a condition, a deadline, and then stop. Whoever breaks that silence usually yields. Breaking it yourself is, many times, negotiating against yourself. Learn to endure those seconds, to breathe within them. If you justify, add embellishments, or over-explain, you weaken your position and discourage the seriousness of the deal. It is not coldness, it is respect for your own word. You trust that what you proposed has foundation and allow it to stand. Silence also protects the listening of soft signals, body language, choice of terms, changes in tone. Behind an impossible may hide an "at that price, no." Behind no budget may lurk "no budget this quarter." If you fill the air, you miss those cracks. Silence allows you to detect where true flexibility lies. Epictetus spoke of perceiving impressions without distorting them, listening without your desires, whispering what you want to hear. Negotiation is a test of that discipline. Ethically, silence must not conceal deceit. Do not lie by omission. If there is essential information whose absence would make the agreement unjust, it must be on the table. Justice begins with you. Seneca would say that nothing useful is built on fraud. Withholding what must be said may earn you a few coins today, but will cost you trust tomorrow. A good name is slow capital. Guard it. Virtuous silence avoids giving away your strategy, but does not hide critical defects the other could not reasonably discover. To avoid speaking too much, prepare. Silent negotiation is cooked beforehand. Define your BATNA, the best alternative if no deal is struck. Scale your objectives into 3 rings: ideal, acceptable, minimum. Set boundaries you will not cross. Draft questions. Rehearse creative options. With that map, silence is no longer empty. It is maneuvering space. If you are caught without a map, you will talk to buy time, and poorly placed words will turn into involuntary promises. Marcus Aurelius preferred to lose an opportunity than lose integrity. Better to delay than to betray yourself. Silence against provocation also matters here. Some will use pressure tactics, unrealistic deadlines, competitor comparisons, dramatic silences, veiled threats. Do not react. Name the tactic without raising your tone. I prefer to decide on realistic schedules. Let us compare scopes before comparing prices. I need to review with my team. Then stop. Your composure signals that you will not sell your decision out of fear. Epictetus would celebrate it. You have protected your faculty of choice. Negotiating with silence does not mean becoming hermetic. Communicate clearly what sustains trust. Your processes, your timelines, your risks, your quality standards. Clarity on the essentials shortens the path. For the rest, ask before affirming. Help me understand. How does it work on your side? What worries you about our proposal? Honest questions, attentive silences, fairer agreements. When no clear advantage exists, remember the golden rule. If it is not good for both, it will not be good for you in the long run. Negotiation is relationship, not raid. Silence helps you recognize signs of imbalance, hyperbolic promises, lack of transparency, resistance to put things in writing, pressure to close without review. Stay silent. Take a day. Return with a simple table of risks and benefits. Seneca would encourage that pause that saves from lengthy regrets. Practically speaking, write everything down. Silence between meetings is not emptiness, it is order. Summary of agreements, tasks, responsibilities, dates. Send it without rhetoric. That record silences future disputes because it summons facts. Marcus Aurelius loved precision. A clear line in an email is worth more than 20 verbal promises in a noisy room. Memory is malleable, a document is less so. Avoid showmanship. Vanity pushes you to speak to seem competent, but real competence shows in the quality of your questions and the sobriety of your commitments. He who promises too much reveals ignorance of costs. He who speaks little and delivers builds a reputation that is slow but solid. Epictetus would say, "Do not boast of your progress, show it in your works." In negotiation, that means punctual deliveries and absence of noise. An honest trick: when you feel about to yield from discomfort, take a breath and say, "I need time to think about it." Do not justify. Do not apologize. That pause saves you from unnecessary discounts, unbalanced clauses, favors that turn into obligations. The discomfort lasts minutes, the bad deal months. Temperance pays. Use silence also to listen to your own body. Tense jaw, raised shoulders, tightened stomach, signs that your boundary is being crossed. The body is a discreet ally. Adjust posture, slow your breathing, ask for a pause. Seneca valued the simple aids that restore temperance. A short hallway walk has saved deals about to break from pride. If the negotiation is digital, silence is called not responding immediately. Written words set positions and ignite misunderstandings. Reread, cut, save to drafts, share with a colleague, return later. Do not fall into the trap of off-hour messages that commit more than they should. Marcus Aurelius guarded against impulse. You can master it with a button. Send tomorrow. When the other side does not play fair, silence can mean withdrawal. You are not obliged to sustain crooked tables. Announce your reasons respectfully and stand up. Epictetus would praise that freedom. No one forces you to put your peace and your name at risk for a rotten deal. Sometimes leaving in time is the best negotiation you can make with yourself, and if there is no deal, let it not be from pride but from standard. You leave knowing you did not sell your judgment for urgency or your word for vanity. Your silence has been your guardian. The day a better opportunity returns, it will find you with your house in order, without impossible promises binding you. Over the years, that consistency builds something that cannot be bought. Trust. And trust, when at last there is clear advantage, is your greatest advantage. To conclude, remember that silence in negotiation is not absence, it is an instrument. Just as a pause makes music between notes, your silences give shape and meaning to what you say. Speak when you must honor truth, ask rightly, or set a commitment. Stay silent when impulse wants to give away your information, when pressure wants to buy you, when vanity wants to show you off. Thus your word will not be cheap coin on noisy tables, but a precise tool at the service of agreements that can endure with honor and peace. Seventh Stoic moment, when your impulse is to show off. The impulse to show off is a thirst disguised as brilliance. It appears as a tingling on the tongue that urges you to recount what you did, what you know, what you achieved, and it pushes you to conquer gazes as if your breath depended on that applause. To remain silent here is not to deny the good you have done, but to save it from the vanity that dilutes it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the value of an action lies in its accord with rational nature, not in the noise it produces. Vanity confuses the echo with the music. The Stoic prefers that the work speak when it must, and that in the meantime the heart remain at its craft. The desire to show off has a clear anatomy. First comes the fantasy of being recognized, then the need to underline one's own name, then the subtle exaggeration that urges you to embellish the story. Yielding to this sequence brings brief satisfaction and longer emptiness. Seneca warned that glory is a loan from rumor, and that no sensible person rests on a borrowed bed. When you feel the impulse, recognize its source. It is not love of truth, it is hunger for reflection. That recognition is already half a victory. To remain silent for a moment, breathe, and let the gesture find its proportion prevents your work from turning into spectacle. It is not about hiding your light or denying the good. It is about remembering why it was born. If it was born to serve the good, it needs no trumpet. If it was born to edify, it needs no marquee. Epictetus was severe with those who displayed their moral progress in the square. Bathe without showing the soap. Your work, your discipline, your patience, your kept word will speak for you, without turning you into a crier of what by nature should remain sober. Silence, then, is a way of reinforcing the foundations. A house that shouts about its walls usually hides cracks. A house that simply shelters and covers needs no banner. Vanity also disguises itself as teaching. Sometimes you share because you want to help, but the ego slips in and seeks a stage. The antidote is simple. Ask yourself if what you're about to say is necessary for the other's good now, or if it is only a mirror for you to admire yourself. Marcus Aurelius preferred usefulness over display. If what you recount does not improve the task or ease another's burden, perhaps it is not time to tell it. Silence does not rob you of merit. It protects you from turning it into caricature. When the time comes to teach, teach with deeds, with processes, with time, not with fireworks that dazzle without warming. Guarding against vanity also involves guarding the body. When you are about to show off, your posture changes. Chest inflates, head leans forward, smile seeks approval. Notice these signs. Exhale, lower your shoulders a millimeter, return your gaze to the task. These are small movements that deflate the balloon. Seneca appreciated such modest aids that sustain temperance. The body, trained, offers the soul a track. Your silence will not be repression. It will be a deeper channel for the same river. Social media sharpens this moment. The immediacy of digital applause has the same effect as sugar on the blood. It spikes quickly and drops just as fast. To stay silent here means to ask whether what you are about to post serves your telos or only your anxiety. Epictetus would say, "Do not hand over your peace to what is beyond your control, and nothing is less controllable than others' thumbs. Share when there is a good to offer, not when the inner void seeks dopamine." Digital sobriety does not extinguish your voice. It makes it rarer and therefore more valuable. It is also wise to distinguish legitimate joy from showing off. Joy wants to give thanks. Showing off wants to collect. Joy shares to celebrate the good. Vanity shares to create debt. If when telling your achievement you expect tribute, be suspicious. If in recounting it you would be content with just saying thank you and moving on, perhaps there is no trap. Marcus Aurelius insisted on acting and moving along. Let the harvest nourish whom it must, and return to the furrow. That going and returning in silence prevents your life from becoming a showcase and preserves it as a workshop. Silence in the face of the urge to show off also guards your creative energy. Talking too much about what is still taking shape exposes the seed to unnecessary winds. Seneca recommended that projects seek form before seeking an audience. Keeping quiet while the work matures allows you to correct without eyes upon you and arrive with work, not with promise. When you finally show, you will be showing something that can sustain questions and withstand the weight of reality without breaking at the first comment. There are situations, however, where naming yourself is just. Defending your authorship, claiming credit, protecting a process, denouncing misappropriation is not showing off. It is justice. The difference lies in intention and form. Speak plainly and briefly, without theatrics, with evidence. Epictetus would teach to act according to virtue, not pride. Your voice can protect a right without turning into a megaphone for your ego. Once the right is clear, return to the craft. Do not linger to listen to the echo of corridors. That echo does not nourish. A useful exercise to tame vanity is to give without telling, offer help anonymously, share a resource without signature, suggest an improvement without claiming credit. Do it now and then as training. This practice reminds your spirit that its main reward is internal, the tranquility of having done well. Marcus Aurelius found rest in the idea that good done in silence adds to the order of the whole, even if no one sees it. Explore that peace. It teaches you to walk without the crutch of approval. If your environment rewards those who make the most noise, your silence may seem like a disadvantage. But in the long run, seriousness weighs more than bravado. Time, a judge without haste, exposes hollow works. Solid reputation grows with the slowness of good trees. Seneca contrasted quick applause with the esteem of those who judge well. Aspire to the latter, and while it comes, guard your interior from comparisons. Another's joy does not take your place. Vanity feeds on microscopic envies. Silence that blesses the good in others leaves it unfed. In intimacy, Ask yourself about the root. When did you learn that you had to shine to be seen? Perhaps there were times when praise was the door to affection. Honor that story and recognize that today you can choose another door. Epictetus would say that freedom consists in not depending on what does not belong to you, and applause does not belong to you. Breathe when the impulse comes. Let it pass like a cloud. Return to work. Your work, in time, will open its own windows. There is no urgency. By practicing this, you will notice that speaking less of yourself makes you more attentive to others. You will listen with less haste, ask with more precision, celebrate without competing. When the time comes to present your own work, the very community you never had to convince will give you place. Authority grows like this, in silence, serving, refining, and a day comes when they ask you to speak, not because you shouted, but because you did. That day, let your voice follow the same principle that brought you here. Sober, useful, with no toll to vanity. The scene will follow its course, and you will return to the workshop with the same spirit with which you began the day. Eighth Stoic moment: before making a promise in the heat of the moment. To promise in the heat of the moment is to sign with vapor ink. Emotion inflates possibilities. Euphoria underestimates costs. Guilt seeks to overcompensate. And vanity adds decorations that condemn you to failures you never intended. Here, silence is both lifeline and compass. Be silent for a long moment. Calculate costs. Check your real schedule. Ask about scope and conditions, and only then commit to what you can fulfill with honor. Seneca showed that life is wasted more by distraction than by lack of time. A hasty commitment is distraction dressed up as generosity. Not all heat is bad. Emotion can ignite motivation, but it must remain in the oven of reason before emerging into the world as a promise. Marcus Aurelius urged stripping things of what is not essential to see their nature. In a request or an offer, the essentials are time, energy, resources, priorities, and purpose. Ask yourself how much of each is demanded by the yes you are about to give away. If you cannot answer in writing, do not promise. Stay silent. Ask for time to reply. Return when your mind has separated impulse from judgment. External pressure worsens the math. It's urgent. Only you can. If not now, everything falls apart. Another's hurry tries to buy your promise with the coin of your anxiety. Epictetus would remind you that what drags you without your assent does not belong to you. Postpone. Whoever is offended because you will not promise immediately does not seek a fair agreement. They seek a compliant executor. Your silence here protects justice and your future, because a promise made just to appease another is paid with interest in your rest, your family, your health, and your deep work. No one pays those interests for you. Hot promises often come with over-promising. Words like always, never, everything, whatever it takes are signs that emotion has taken the pen. Cut back. Replace with until, in, with, according to. Mark limits until such a date in such an hour, with such resources, according to these criteria. Marcus Aurelius defended modesty in action. A modest promise well kept is worth more than a grand one broken. Humble precision is the elegance of commitment. The accounting of commitment includes invisible costs. Saying yes to a new project is saying no to hours of sleep, to a book that nourishes you, to a conversation with your child, to a walk that clears you. When the heat of the moment tempts you, list what will be displaced. If, even seeing the price, you decide it is worth it, your yes will have peace. If the price is too high, your no will be an act of love for the whole. Seneca insisted that no one gives what they do not have. To promise what you do not possess today is to indebt yourself to your own spirit. Silence before promising also allows you to distinguish whom you are promising to. Some commitments nourish your telos, relationships that strengthen because there is reciprocity and shared good. Others drain you in a loop of demands without return. Epictetus would advise examining the company of your ends. See if that promise brings you closer to your form or steals it away. Committing to what deforms you is a slow betrayal. Silence restores your shape. A practical method, the rule of 3 breaths and 3 questions. Breathe 3 times before replying, then ask what, how much, when. What exactly do they expect you to do? How much time and energy will it take? When must it be done? And what happens if things shift? If there is no clear answer, there is no promise. Marcus Aurelius, who valued order, would approve of this small discipline. It is a filter that does not wound, but protects. Speaking after that filter spares you endless renegotiations and needless guilt. Avoid promising to repair guilt. When you have failed, remorse pushes you to offer more than you should. Better to repair what you broke precisely. Ask forgiveness. Fix what can be fixed. Restore what is due. Disproportionate promises conceal shame and generate new failures. Seneca preferred a brief blush to a long disgrace. Your honor does not grow by signing new debts. It grows by diligently fulfilling what corresponds now. Reputation is built on promises kept, not on glittering promises. Epictetus urged not to promise virtues, but to practice them. Translate this: do not announce you will be punctual. Arrive on time. Do not proclaim you will change the team. Document and execute a process that improves the work. When the environment rewards announcements, your silence and your fulfillment become rare and thus valuable. In time, people will seek you not for your enthusiasm, but for the reliability of your word. There are promises you must not accept, even if you can fulfill them, because they disorder the soul. Promising to help in gossip, promising silence where there is abuse, promising to be available at all hours, promising to tolerate disrespect in exchange for belonging. That heat is fire that burns houses down. Marcus Aurelius said that nothing that makes you worse can be good for you. If a promise makes you smaller, it is unjust even if you sustain it. Be silent and withdraw your hand with dignity. Creative silence allows you to formulate counteroffers. Not everything is yes or no. Perhaps you can do less at another time, on other terms. Stay silent to think it through. Return with a concrete proposal. If the other values real good, they will negotiate. If they only sought your docility, they will be annoyed. That fact teaches you whether you should be in that deal. Epictetus emphasized that freedom lies in saying no to what does not suit you, even if it flatters you. To promise the just in the right measure, at the right speed, is freedom applied. To safeguard yourself, write. Before promising, put your week, your deliveries, your margins on paper. Seeing it prevents self-deception. When you respond, leave a record of what was agreed. Writing prevents misunderstandings. Seneca would celebrate that sober foresight that prevents confusion and resentment. Your silence between the request and the signature exists to allow this clarity. Do not be ashamed to ask for it. And if you already promised in the heat, repair in time. Do not maintain an impossible one out of pride. Communicate quickly, adjust terms, take the cost of your haste, learn. Prompt correction preserves bonds that delay breaks. Marcus Aurelius practiced this honesty with himself. I was wrong. Now I return to the path. Your word does not lose dignity by correcting. It loses it by sustaining fiction. To promise with honor is a form of love. You will not love better by saying yes to everything. You will love better by saying yes to what you can fulfill well, and by saying no to what would make you fail in chain. Before promising, then be silent. Let emotion become judgment, desire become calendar, impulse become just contract. When you open your mouth, let your commitment already be supported by deeds that will make it possible. Thus, the heat of the beginning will feed a serene flame, not a fire that leaves you in ashes. 9th Stoic moment. In empty online controversies. Social networks are designed so that minor disputes look like battles and serious nuances turn into irreconcilable factions. In that setting, many controversies are just noise feeding on itself. Entering them is to hand over your attention, your time, and your spirit to a machine that rewards outrage and punishes prudence. Silence does not always mean disengagement. Often it is an act of self-government. You choose not to enter a contest that serves neither your telos nor the common good. Marcus Aurelius preferred what endures over what dazzles. Empty controversies dazzle for minutes and are forgotten. Your serenity, once lost there, takes time to return. The structure of this noise is familiar. A partial argument goes viral, mockery piles up, angry replies arrive, then screenshots, then endless threads. The reward is dopamine for all and learning for almost none. Epictetus, who sharply distinguished what depends on us, would ask us to look at what you actually control in that arena. Barely your manner and your time. You do not control how others read. You do not control the algorithm. You do not control irony turning into caricature. Timely silence spares you from becoming a character in a play others are writing. Silence here is not moral indifference. Some issues demand voice, and some injustices require denunciation. The key is to distinguish empty controversy from necessary conversation. The first seeks winners, the second seeks truth. The first demands speed, the second requires rest. The first rewards biting wit, the second asks for patience and evidence. Seneca would praise the deliberation that delays judgment. Before speaking, ask whether what you are about to say adds light or only more heat, and whether the chosen channel allows human exchange. If not, step back and look for another table, a call, a long text, a meeting. The good loves places where it can grow. One rule of hygiene: do not respond at the peak of emotion or while the notification still vibrates in your hand. Close the app, breathe, write in a draft no one will see, let it cool. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself to calm the surf. Do the same. If the next day you still consider your input valuable, let your intervention be brief, concrete, respectful, and above all, rare. Scarcity restores value to your word. If you speak every day about everything, your voice becomes just another frequency. If you choose wisely, it becomes a bell. Charity is difficult on a screen. There is no tone, no gaze, no shared pause. The medium pushes for snap judgment and the harshest possible reading of the other. Silence in empty controversies is also silencing the arrogance that presumes to know another's heart from 2 sentences out of context. Epictetus taught not to rush to assent. Do not turn your supposition into a verdict. If you truly care, ask. If you do not, let go. Life is short and screens are not worth your whole day. The algorithm rewards your anger because it is predictable. Choose the unpredictable. Silence. Shift focus from what outrages you to what you are building. Post something uplifting. Share a book that orders your thoughts. Narrate a process where you learned. If you decide to join a public conversation, bring sources, avoid adjectives, offer a bridge for dignified exit. Seneca, who despised the shouting of the forum, would appreciate this gesture of civility. To argue without breaking, to disagree without ridiculing. Silence the sarcasm, open the facts. Empty controversy also captures your identity. It pushes you to define yourself by opposition, to become the one who refutes X, the one who unmasks Y. That identity consumes creativity and ties you to others' agendas. Marcus Aurelius advised returning to your own work after each distraction. Your present needs your workshop, not your trench. Silence is the path back. You are not a reply algorithm. You are a person with a good to-do. Remember the telos you wrote at the start of the day and compare it to the fight of the moment. If they do not align, do not enter. There are public discussions that matter and must be had. When they touch rights, life, justice, concrete truth, entering can be duty. Even then, silence is part of the method. Listen first. Ask, verify, distinguish between error and bad faith. Point out with precision, avoid humiliation, offer corrections that allow someone to change without losing face. Epictetus insisted on healing the soul, not displaying it. One who corrects with charity transforms more than one who humiliates with brilliance. Practice timely withdrawal. If you notice dialogue turning into a ring, if the other seeks to win rather than understand, if you yourself are ruled by the applause of the crowd, stop. Say, "I'll end here." Leave a resource for those who want depth, and step away calmly. The alternative is to stay and fight out of pride. Victory in that terrain lasts minutes and sours hours. Your silence returns your day to your hands. Seneca would repeat that what is truly valuable is rarely found in the tumult. Care for your body. An empty controversy alters your pulse, tightens your jaw, dries your mouth, steals your sleep. It is a physical tax for something you will not remember tomorrow. Silence is also closing the door and going for a walk. The landscape teaches the measure of things. Marcus Aurelius found proportion by contemplating the smallness of what seems huge today and dust tomorrow. Bring that perspective to your screen. Resize the urgent to its true scale. In community, declare your standard. You will not share screenshots of private conversations. You will not humiliate anyone by name. You will not join threads that turn people into caricatures. That personal vow, sustained with calm, is contagious. Epictetus believed in the pedagogical force of example. You can be an oasis of clean conversation in the noisy square. Some will silently thank you and seek you out to talk about what matters, and if you slipped and got dragged in, repair without drama. Delete what was unjust, apologize to those concerned, rest, return to work. Do not feed guilt with more noise. Discipline is not never falling, but rising quickly and learning. Marcus Aurelius practiced that exercise again and again. That is why he could write with such sobriety. Your life is not defined by one unfortunate thread, but by the constancy with which you choose what is worth it. At the core, keeping silent in empty online controversies is protecting the temple where your day is decided, your attention. Wherever you put it, something will grow. If you put it in the ring, irritation will grow. If you put it in your work, good will grow. Choosing silence here is not silence forever. It is silence now to speak better where it truly matters. And when that truly moment comes, your word will not come saturated with gunpowder. It will come accompanied by the calm that persuades. Then real conversation will be possible. And your day, grateful, will return to your hands with the sense of having inhabited your life instead of renting it to an algorithm. In that sobriety, the way opens toward the final moment awaiting us, when silence can be justice and charity at once, requiring even finer care before the word is spoken. 10th Stoic moment. If telling the truth would unjustly harm another. Telling the truth is an act of justice, but not every truth spoken now is just. There are moments when revealing it would cause unnecessary, disproportionate or irreparable harm, and then virtue asks you to remain silent or to postpone. It is not about covering up evil, but about protecting the good. Epictetus would say that the right word is not just any sound, but the one that fits the part of us that decides. And prudent decision weighs motive, context, and consequence. If speaking today breaks a trust that could be repaired if you wait, if it exposes someone who cannot defend themselves, if it multiplies pain without adding light, your silence is not betrayal. It is a form of temperance in service of justice. Silence does not erase the truth. It prepares it so that when spoken, it heals instead of wounds. Truth can be medicine or knife. The difference is not only in the content, but in the manner, the place, and the time. Stoic parrhesia is not a license to unload. It is frankness guided by charity. Saying, "I said it because it's true," does not absolve you when the manner was cruel, when it was unnecessary, when the audience was improper. Seneca warned that reason without gentleness turns tyrannical. Gentleness is not cowardly weakness. It is firmness that does not humiliate. If the truth you carry burns, let the ember lose its smoke. Breathe, write, consult someone sensible. Choose words that do not turn the person into a label. What you seek is not to display a fault, but to open a path toward amendment. There are cases where silence would be betrayal, abuse, fraud, risks to life or dignity. Then justice commands speaking and acting promptly, even if it hurts, even if it costs you a place. But outside those thresholds, prudence asks you to examine intention. Do you want to help or to settle scores? Do you seek the other's good or the relief of your own anger? In the first case, prepare a dignified setting, choose a plain tone, state facts, offer ways forward. In the second, keep silent, work on your spirit, and only then speak. Do not use truth as punishment. Truth, when wielded as a whip, can be exact and still unjust. There are also secrets entrusted to you. They are not your property. They are a deposit. Breaking them without necessity damages the architecture of trust. If the information you keep endangers no one, and telling it would only feed curiosity, remain silent. If prolonged silence perpetuates an injustice, speak to the proper person and in the proper setting. Marcus Aurelius distrusted rumor even when it seemed to serve the good. He preferred just channels. Ask yourself who truly needs to know this, for what purpose, with what limits, and at what time. Responding soberly to those questions prevents you from turning a serious matter into spectacle. Sometimes truth should not yet be spoken because it does not fully exist. A detail is missing, a nuance, the word that makes it whole. To speak prematurely deforms it. Epictetus insisted on suspending assent when the impression is incomplete. Silence in such cases protects truth from your haste and others from your half-measures. When you have it, deliver it without rhetoric, with the care of someone offering a tool that could cut if mishandled. You will be surprised how much others appreciate frankness that arrives clean, with documents, with context, and with the door open to repair. Also, consider asymmetry of power. Speaking a harsh truth to someone exposed, in front of those who cannot defend them, is abuse. If you truly want to correct, choose a private setting. The aim is not to gain an audience, but to gain justice. Seneca distinguished between reprimanding and shaming. The first aims at amendment, the second destroys. Keeping silent in public to speak in private is not cowardice, it is moral elegance. And if the conduct persists and the common good requires it, then yes, speak with factual clarity and the calm of one who does not seek revenge. Time makes even the best intention prudent. When you are wounded, your words come loaded with gunpowder. Waiting a night, writing a letter you may never send, breathing and asking counsel from someone wise can save bonds that deserve a chance. Marcus Aurelius recommended understanding before blaming. Understanding does not mean excusing. It means looking with eyes that want to heal. If after understanding you decide you must speak a hard truth, you will be better prepared to say it without ferocity. Justice also measures proportionality. There are small truths whose exposure destroys greater goods, an old imprudence already repaired, a minor mistake amplified by your anger, a confidence that is not yours. Ask yourself what concrete good you produce by speaking now, and what goods you would destroy if you speak. Virtue does not feed on moral bonfires, it feeds on sober repairs. Epictetus would encourage choosing the useful work over the victory of pride. Sometimes the useful work is to remain silent today so you can speak tomorrow with effectiveness and justice. Silence, however, must not become a pretext. If your silence comes from fear of confrontation, name it. If it comes from laziness to get involved, admit it. If it comes from convenience of preserving your image, correct it. Prudence does not justify complicity. There are silences that weigh like guilt and silences that rest like peace. Distinguish them by their fruit. The first shrinks you, the second strengthens you. Marcus Aurelius taught to judge things by their effect on the soul. If your silence diminishes you, it is not the right one. Think about the language you will use when the time comes. Avoid labels that close. Choose descriptions that open. Speak of facts, not intentions. Point out behaviors, not identities. Offer consequences and ways out. This happened. It affected me this way. This is what I expect to change. This is how we can repair it. Phrases like these carry truth with tempered hands. If goodwill exists on the other side, the path clears. If not, you will have acted justly without adding rubble. As Seneca reminds us, not everything true is timely. That is why prudence must accompany sincerity. Finally, remember that the purpose of telling the truth is to serve the good, not to relieve an impulse. Truth can wait for its hour without losing efficacy. Harm, once done, rarely undoes itself. Keep the blade sheathed until the tool is necessary and useful. Epictetus would sum it up. Decide from your inner ruling faculty, not from applause or from anger. When you can say it without debt to pride and without joy in wounding, speak. If today that is not possible, remain silent. In that silence there is no cowardice. There is self-government. There is justice in preparation. And while you wait, do not fold your arms. Order the facts. Review your motives. Practice the right phrase. And prepare the place where that truth can be received. Thus, when you finally pronounce it, your voice will not be a knife but an instrument, not a discharge but a service. The art of keeping silent at the right time. Keeping silent at the right time is neither escape nor cowardice. It is, in truth, one of the boldest acts a human being can exercise. We live surrounded by noise that demands immediate response, that rewards whoever shouts the loudest, that confuses speed with reason. But Marcus Aurelius knew it well in his campaign tent, when in the midst of battle he wrote that one should speak only what is just and necessary, because a word without temperance is a river overflowing that sweeps everything away in its path. To keep silent at the right time is to contain that river, to return it to its course, to choose not to destroy with an impatient tongue what you will later need to rebuild with tears. Governed silence is discipline, not the imposed silence of one who does not dare, but the chosen silence of one who understands that sometimes the noblest thing is not the reply, but the pause. Seneca said it without embellishment. It is safer to stumble with your feet than with your tongue. For a physical stumble one recovers quickly, but a word spoken in heat can pursue you for years. How many times do we regret what we said and not what we kept silent? Prudent silence rarely leaves a scar. Imprudent words are often etched in another's memory as wounds. But it is not an empty silence, nor a mouth closed by fear. It is a fertile silence. Like the earth that seems still and yet within it roots are being formed, so too Stoic silence prepares words to be born with strength and meaning. Epictetus taught, freedom begins in the mouth, because if you govern your tongue, you govern your life. Governing your tongue does not mean denying truth, but giving it the right form and the right moment. For truth spoken at the wrong time can be injustice, and words launched without measure can become betrayal. Imagine what changes in the life of one who learns this art. Provocation comes, and instead of being dragged along, you breathe, remain silent, wait. The other's theatre loses its audience, the conflict loses oxygen. A loved one suffers, and instead of suffocating them with clichés, you choose silent companionship that brings more comfort than 1,000 speeches. At work, when negotiation grows tense, you choose to listen, not to reveal what is not yet convenient, and your silence becomes strategy. Even on social media, that stage where everyone demands your reply, you choose to close the window, and in that gesture recover hours of calm you once surrendered to the noise. Keeping silent at the right time also protects you from yourself, from that part of you that wants to show off, that seeks immediate approval, that promises without calculation, that replies to win a point, though losing peace. Chosen silence is the brake that protects your dignity from your own impulse. It is the reminder that your worth does not depend on answering everything, nor on pleasing everyone. Seneca advised measuring each action by the criterion of whether it serves your life or diminishes it. And without doubt, words thrown without thought diminish, governed silence enlarges. This art, however, is not mastered in a day. Just as muscles need repetitions, temperance needs exercise. There will be days you fail. You will reply with anger, promise in haste, speak where you should have kept silent. Do not take it as defeat, but as part of the workshop. Error becomes teacher when you face it, when you learn to recognize what caused it and choose to act differently next time. Epictetus said, "Philosophy is not discourse but practice," and to practice means to return again and again, with patience, with constancy, with humility. Today you have walked through 10 scenes in which silence becomes virtue. 10 moments in which keeping silent is not betrayal of truth, but fidelity to your peace. You have seen that it is not about living gagged, but about choosing when your word is medicine and when it would be poison. And that discernment is perhaps one of the greatest gifts of Stoicism, reminding you that you are not a slave to impulse, that you can choose the rhythm of your response, that your dignity does not depend on the noise of others, but on the serenity of your own judgment. Keep this in your memory. Not everything deserves a reply. Not every emotion deserves to be translated into words. Not every provocation deserves an echo from your mouth. Life is too short to give your voice to useless discussions. Silence at the right time is saving of soul, care of body, defense of peace. And when you choose to remain silent where once you exploded, you discover that freedom was not outside, but in that brief pause that returned self-government to you. That is why I invite you to keep training in this art, not as an isolated exercise, but as a habit that transforms your life. This space is here to accompany you in that practice, to remind you each week that your silence can be strength, that your word can be justice, that your life can recover the clarity that noise steals. Stay here, because together we can turn these reflections into a living discipline, not to appear virtuous, but to embody virtue in every conversation, in every gesture, in every day. And when in time you look back, you will discover there are fewer scenes you erased with regret and more memories you kept with pride. That your voice carries more weight because it no longer competes with shouting, and that your silence has more prestige because it is no longer emptiness, but root. That will be the sign you have learned the art of keeping silent at the right time. That your whole life, in words and silences, became testimony of temperance, of justice, and of serene strength. Your voice is essential here. Every reflection strengthens and elevates our community, reflecting the true value of each individual and contributing to our shared Stoic identity. The reflection that receives the most support will be set as the standard of this community of Stoic minds. A community that does not flee from pain but walks through it with courage, with wisdom, with honor. We will see each other in our next gathering at Stoicism for Winners, where we will continue exploring the riches of Stoic wisdom applied to modern life. Now, take the opportunity to deepen your Stoic practice with new recommended podcast sessions. Follow us so you don't miss any reflection that could help you at just the moment when everything feels overwhelming. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we publish episodes designed to accompany you when life feels heavy, when it's hard to stay calm, when you need a word to remind you who you are. Not following us is to risk missing exactly that lesson that could bring back the peace you have been seeking. Until we meet again, remember, you are the sole owner of your perception, the creator of your peace, and the warrior of your own battle. This is the legacy of Stoicism, the art of being invincible.